if I've chosen this topic of sport diplomacy and the German-Israeli example, it is not only in order to tell the story of the way sports had a major influence over the relations between Israel and Germany, but also as a kind of an example or a platform for things which could be done all over the world. And I fully agree with you, Mr. Donfrin, that this is something which could be useful also in other circumstances and in other places. But of course, this is a specific story which starts at the end of the Second World War, when the atrocities committed by Germany, by the Nazi regimes, and particularly the genocide of the Jewish people were revealed to the world. And that was in 1945. A few years later, the State of Israel was founded in 1948. And at that moment, for this young State of Israel, the question of the relations with Germany was an extremely complex issue. We did not wish to have relations with Germany. Because Germany, 3 years after the Second World War, symbolized and represented everything which was negative and tragic. It represented the genocide of the Jewish people. Many of the actors in Germany, in this new Germany, which had been, or in the Federal Republic of Germany after 1949, still were linked one way or another to the Nazis and to the Nazi regime. The prevailing feeling in Israel was that we don't want anything to do with Germans or with Germany. Many people who had come to Israel after the Second World War were themselves victims of the Nazis and carried with them also a very strong feeling that they did not want anything to do with Germany. In the beginning of the 50s, in 1952, we reached an agreement with the Federal Republic of Germany, that is West Germany of today, regarding compensation and reparations for Jews for a variety of aspects. I would say it's for personal damages and also for property damages. And this was really the basis on which we started a very slow and very complex dialogue between our two countries. At the beginning, it was only about reparations, and Germany understood, accepted, and acknowledged its responsibility for what had happened during the Second World War, and it was limited to that issue. And then, in a very slow and interesting way, other relations started to develop, and here sports, and particularly soccer, played a central role. To continue the timeline, we established diplomatic relations between Germany and Israel only many years later, in 1965. So there was a rather long period of time, the 50s until the mid-60s, in which we didn't have diplomatic relations, in which, generally speaking, Israelis would not travel to Germany, and Israelis had no contact to Germany. But as I said, sports and particularly soccer started playing a very important role. One club that I would like to mention particularly in Germany, because this is really the pioneer, this club is the pioneer in terms of the relations between Israel and Germany, is Borussia Mönchengladbach. Which really has played a very important role. Why this particular club? I think that it is mostly, those are personal decisions. It is about people in this particular soccer club deciding that it would be important that they would play a role which goes beyond soccer, beyond sports, in trying to build bridges between Israel and Germany. Israeli football trainers, soccer trainers, received invitations to come over to Germany to participate in training courses. And in 1969, that is 4 years after the establishment of diplomatic relations, we had the first soccer game between a German team, Mönchengladbach, and the Israeli national team. For the anecdote, we lost 6-0. Because the Israeli national team at that time was really not particularly good. I remember as a kid, it was in 1969, we were playing at that time, we were still playing, we were part of the Asian group. And I remember as a kid listening on the radio, we had no TV, to soccer games between Israel and South Vietnam, which was a rather good team at that time. Of course, South Vietnam doesn't exist anymore. Or between Israel and Iran, at that time, we had pretty good relations. So we had this first soccer game between a German team and the Israeli national team. And actually, it was about much more, it's much more than soccer. This would be the equivalent, one may say, of the ping-pong diplomacy, which took place in the 70s and which enabled the first contacts between the United States and China. So this would be the equivalent. It was something which had a highly symbolic value. And here, and this is the heart of the argument, sports, and particularly popular sports, and I would say that for most of the world this is soccer, can play an extremely important role because it projects something which is normal. It projects normalization. Is it enough? No, it's not enough. One should not overdo it. One should not overplay it. One should not think that sports can replace political contacts, can replace economic contacts, but they have a huge value as a public diplomacy instrument because they project something which is normal, in which the enmity is and I think that generally speaking, I mean, when you think of spectator sports, it's a way also of showing your solidarity or your belonging to a certain group. And then you might have a fight against another group, but it happens with very clear rules and nobody gets hurt. But soccer fans know that a soccer game is much more than 22 guys running after a ball. It's something much deeper than that. One of the great English trainers said once that soccer is not a life and death question, it's much more important than that. So for most people, it is really a vehicle which goes far beyond a mere sport activity. And in the Israeli-German context, the build-up which led to a kind of a normalization passed through this particular path. We have had since 1969 a German trainer this was the first German soccer trainer in an Israeli team. We have had also Israeli players in German teams. Now it's considered as something which is totally normal. We have a very nice and very good Israeli player playing for Hertha Berlin, which is coming back now to the first division. And this is something which is considered as totally normal. So one may say that 70 years after the Second World War, 70 years after the Holocaust, at least there is a platform of normal and friendly relations when it comes to sports, not only to sports, but again, this is an important example. We are going to host in Israel next week the European Soccer Championship under 21. And here again, this is a vector of normality because people are very happy to see the German team there. And I think that the German team is quite talented and that they will probably be quite successful. But again, this is a demonstration of the kind of messages that sports can project. an interesting thing, because this is also related to the history of Germany, all those contacts were established with West German teams. For us, East Germany and East German soccer was a great unknown. We knew the names of the teams because they were very important and good teams, but we had no contacts with them because we had no contacts whatsoever with the Democratic Republic of Germany, with East Germany. That changed, of course, after reunification. And those contacts at local level, at sport level, are also an important part of the dialogue that we are establishing now with the eastern part of Germany. It enables young people to be together, to play together. As you mentioned earlier, I think that the Israeli-Palestinian example is a very good example. We have hosted here in Germany teams composed of young Israelis and young Palestinians. We had a very interesting activity last year with women's soccer, with 3 teams, 1 Israeli team, 1 Palestinian team, and 1 Jordanian team. And it's obvious that through sports, you can bring people together. You have to cooperate, you have to play together, and this plays a very important role. I would not, as I said earlier, I would not see sports as a replacement for serious diplomacy. But it certainly adds something. This is an added value which you cannot find in any other human activity. What we have achieved between Israel and Germany is also the consequence of that. And this is why I wanted to discuss the issue, because I believe that it is important not only in our specific German-Israeli context, but also in a much wider context. It is important as a lesson. It is important as something that you can take away in totally different places of the world. You were mentioning Syria. So, of course, we are in the midst now of a humanitarian tragedy. We are in the midst of a civil war in Syria, and it would be pointless and naive to think that by bringing football teams or soccer teams from the 2 fighting sides in Syria, then everybody would see the light and life would be wonderful. That is not the case, certainly not the case. But if and when a reconciliation process will take place, then this will become a very important element. So thank you very much for your attention.